Hey everybody, so let me share my screen. So I'm going to walk you through creating a Shazam form in REDCap. And what Shazam does is it allows you to take your fields and display them in a table format. So let me go to one of my records here. So this would be if you had to get some address information from a person. The only way you'd be able to display it in REDCap normally is this way, where you have all of the fields listed, row by row. We had an HIV project where they were pulling in contact information from, I think it was like 9 or 10 different sources, so they pretty much had this set of fields copied 9 or 10 times in a long list. And I was able to use Shazam to make it in more of a like an address label format. So Shazam will let you have multiple rows, multiple columns of data and fields on a row. And so you have to have some HTML knowledge, but once you know how to build a table in HTML, then it's pretty easy. So let me just walk you through from the beginning how we do this. So first thing I've got to do is enable my Shazam module, which if any of you want to use Shazam or any other external module, just shoot us an email and let us know which project number, the project ID, and we can turn these modules on for you. But since I'm an administrator, I can do it myself. So I'm going to enable that. Most of the external modules will allow you to configure the module in this external modules section. However, Shazam is a bit different because this is just configuring the actual module, but it's not where you would build anything. So you'll see down here where it says Shazam setup. That's where we will go in and build our Shazam. Now, when you use Shazam, you have to have a descriptive field. So let me go through and show you the designer here. So I have this address instrument just has all these fields that they're laid out normally. And then I have one that is specifically for Shazam. Now what I like to do is I like to give my fields a prefix of Shazam or SHZM, so I know that I'm using that field specifically in Shazam. And once you have all of your fields together, because you have to, even though Shazam is a way of letting you display these fields, but you still have to have a field in REDCap to store the data. So once we have all of our fields here, the last one I want is a descriptive field, descriptive text, and you don't have to put anything in the field label. That can be blank. And then you just give it a variable name, and once again, I like to use Shazam, so I know that that's where my Shazam is going to be stored. And that field label now, when I go into Shazam setup, when I say add Shazam field, it's any descriptive text fields are going to show up here. So my Shazam address is where I'm going to be adding my HTML. So let me save that. It's blank. There's nothing that's going to happen. But I want to talk about, I want to give you a little primer on HTML tables so you can understand what I'm doing when I walk through this demo. So this is how the first picture at the top is how an HTML table is built. You have these table tags, and within the table tags you have a table row, and then within each row you have to designate the table data, which is the column. So this would be one full row of data with 3 columns. And it's kind of hard to wrap your head around because you have to have the table data or the columns wrapped in the table rows for each row. It's not like a row column where you do one at a time. And then the other thing that you can do, so this is if every row and every column is the same width. So if you have data, it's like a spreadsheet, like in Excel. But like in Excel, you can merge cells. So you can have one cell that spans across 2 cells, or you can have one column that spans across 3 rows. And that's what we're going to use today. So this second picture is, you can see here that this column span is 2. So it spans across 2 of these columns, and it allows you to stretch out the columns however far you want. Now they have to add up to the total number of columns that you have. So you see here at the bottom, we have colspan 2, colspan 2, and then this is a table header, which you can just think of as like table data. That's 5 pieces across, and you can see here at the top, we have 5 columns. So anytime you're doing the row span or the column span, the total has to match the total number of columns. Now, what I like to do, and you can see here in the third picture, this is what we're going to build today. We're going to build sort of an address label, and what I like to do is I like to break my columns up into 20. You don't have to. You can use widths and percentages, but for me, I like to break up the columns into 20 columns because that allows me to have some flexibility in making the labels and the fields as big or as small as I need to. And 20 is a good number to divide by. It's easier to do the math, and you're not having to try to figure out what percentage, 3 divided by 20 is. So this is what we're going to build today. So let me go back to my Shazam setup.
And trust me, for those of you watching, as he goes through this, it will become more and more clear to you what he's doing. So just looking at it and trying to get your head around columns and rows and the HTML, yes, this is an advanced module. So, but as he goes through this and you watch how this develops, I think you're going to like it. So thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. All right. So just so you guys can see what I'm doing, where I'm pulling this information from, I have my fields on the left here, and then I'm going to open up my Shazam HTML on the right, and we're going to walk through and build this real quick. So let me delete this little comment here. So the first thing we need is a table tag. That's going to nest our table, and then the next thing we need is the table row. And then within that, we're going to need a table data tag.
I can't see anything. I just see your REDCap, says first name, last name, address. Are you actually typing anything, or are you just talking?
Yes. No, I'm typing. Let me see. It might be that if I...
There you go. Now I can see it.
Okay, I was hoping I'd be able to show you the fields at the same time, but I think Zoom only picks one tab to show.
Yeah, now I see the REDCap tab, and now I see the HTML tab.
Okay, so since you guys won't be able to see me do both at the same time, just know that when I'm pulling the field names up, they're coming from here. They're coming from these variables.
Okay.
All right, so now we're in the HTML table. And so what we do is...
So I guess I missed it. Did you type in all that stuff, table, TR, TD?
Yes.
Did you type that all in, or did that already come in?
Yeah, no, I typed it in. So what you do is it auto-completes for you. So once you do the table tag, it'll put the ending tag in, and now we need a table row, and then within that we need table data. So the table data is where you're going to actually put your field name and all that information. So the important thing that you have to do in order to use Shazam is you have to use what's called an HTML class. And in here you would say class equals Shazam. And that tells REDCap that what you're using is you're using the Shazam module. And then the other thing that you need that is optional, if you ever have a field that has the little comment bubble or the history bubble, if you want those on your Shazam fields, then you would use Shazam-icons. So it's a good idea to just put those in. If you have to have the Shazam class, but you don't have to have the Shazam icons class. So the next thing we're going to do is put in just blank text here. So I'm going to say label, just so because I'm going to copy and paste these. That way you guys don't have to see me type all these. But the last thing that we want to do is we want to put in our col span or column span. And we're going to leave that blank for now, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste these because we need multiples. So the first one we're going to need, you need one table data cell for the field name, and then you need another cell for the field value for the text box field. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it here, and we're going to say, and let me just copy this down at the bottom so I don't lose it. So one of the things that you can do in REDCap is, instead of typing first name here, like this as text, you can use the Shazam first name label. So I can dynamically pull in the field label. So I'm going to say Shazam first name, and then colon label. And what that does is, if I ever go back to my Shazam field and I decide I don't want it to be called first name, or I don't want it to be called address 1, I want it to be called street address, I just update that field name there, and then Shazam will automatically update it for me. So now we're going to do Shazam first name. And that's, so this one is the label. That's going to say first name. And then this is going to be the actual field that we're going to use. Now we need 2 of these because we're going to do first name and last name.
And just so everybody knows, we are going to post this, so you'll be able to reference it. You don't have to like remember it or try to do screenshots or whatever. We will post this so you can take a look at it. So, sorry, go ahead.
No problem. So now we have the group for the first name and for the last name, and this is all one row. So now what I need to do is I need to create another table row.
So is this 4 columns then that you've created?
Correct.
Okay.
So now I'm going to create another table row, and this time it's going to be the address. So, and I only need 2 labels, 2 columns for that, because it's going to be an address label, and then the text box for that is going to take up the rest of the space. So this will be Shazam address 1 label. And then I'm going to copy this one because my next row is going to be Shazam. It's going to be address 2, which is where you would put, you know, what apartment you're in, or if there's like a suite number. And then the next thing we need is the city, state, and zip code. So that's going to be 6 of these columns. So we're just going to do 2, and then 2 more, and then 2 more. And this white space here doesn't matter in HTML. It gets rid of it. I'm just formatting it this way so you guys can see that it's not just a giant wall of text. So we're going to do Shazam city, colon label, and then Shazam city for the field, and then Shazam state, and then Shazam state for the field, and then Shazam zip code label, and then Shazam zip code. So those 3, that's the 3rd column. Now for the 4th column, we're going to do an email address, which is similar to the address, where it's going to just be 2. And what we're going to do now is we're going to say email address label, and then email address here. And then the next row is going to be phone number and alternate phone number. So we would need 4 of these. All right. So that is all of our Shazam fields. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like without the column spans. Actually, I don't think it'll work without the column spans because there's so like here we have four columns and here we only have two. So these two columns won't have any place to go. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in and I'm going to put the values in for the columns. And I've worked with this already, so I've made sure that these are the values that I need. A lot of the times you have to kind of use trial and error. You might find that, 4 spaces is too much, but 3 is too little, that kind of thing. And so what I've done is all of the first cells, all of the first columns are going to be 3. And then I based everything off of that afterwards. So this is going to be 3, and this is going to be 7, and 3, and 7. So the important thing is that everything in the table row equals 20. So that's why I use 20, because it's easy for me to do the math. So now we can see that there's 20. This is going to be 3. And since there's only one left here, this is going to be 17. Same thing here. This is going to be 3. This one's going to be 17. Now these get a little more.
As you're talking or typing on it, can you write comments in HTML, and that way, like, that reminds us of what we're doing? Like in other programming languages, you can write comments. Is that?
Yeah. So in HTML, the way you would do a comment is you do the less than sign and the exclamation point, and then dash dash. And then you do dash dash and then greater sign to close it.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I just think that would maybe be helpful just because I saw the 10 and I wasn't seeing the 20, but now I see it. So I thought a comment would be helpful to write, but now I know how to do it.
Yeah, and when I normally code, I put a ton of comments in. So it's always helpful, especially if you have to break up, because you can put the comments down in here for each column. Anything that helps you clarify your code is good. So the next one, we're going to do 3 for the city label, and then 4 for the city field. And then since state isn't that big, we're only going to make that one 2. But the state field is a little bigger, so we're going to make that 5. And then the last one, since zip code is small, it's going to be 2, and then the last one's going to be 4.
Hey, one comment real quick. Along the lines of the documentation or the notes or whatever, it's very helpful if you're going to build this that you try to document some of the things that you do in case you're going to leave and pass the project on to someone else. It makes it easier for them to come in and see what you did and why. So just keep that in mind when you're building these kinds of things.
Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, so for the email, it's going to be the same as the address. It's going to be 3 and then 17, which equals 20. And then the last one is going to be like the first group. It's going to be 3 and 7, and then 3 and 7.
And again, you just said those numbers were trial and error. Like you figured 3 and 7, 3 and 7.
Yeah.
Good.
And what I do, because I'll show you when I go back to, after I save this and I can go back to the other window, I'll show you how I work that out. So let me save this. And if we go to the add edit records, I just want to show you the little picture that I made. And what I like to do is I do this in, this is in Microsoft Excel, this bottom picture here. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, and you can see here that what I did is I used Microsoft Excel. I shrunk the columns to where they look roughly about the same width and height to make a square, and I put, I made 20 of them, and then this is how I built it. I kind of wireframed it in Excel to see what the numbers are. So you can see here that this first name one is 3, and then that field is 7, and then 3 and 7. And then 3 and 17. So these are where I got my numbers from. So
okay.
It kind helps to kind of wireframe it in something you can do, or you can just build it by column, because sometimes like what'll happen is like maybe the state field will be too wide and it's covering up the zip code label, and you can move it, and if you have to, you can put it on a different line. You don't have to build it exactly the way I'm building it, because you can do anything you want. It's just whatever design you want to come up with. So now that we have that, so this would be, just to remind you, this is what it looks like before, when everything is all separate. And now when we go to the address label for Shazam, this is what it looks like now. And these are the little history and the comment buttons, icons that I was telling you about. And so now you can just, you can enter your data and just tab through, and then it works with checkboxes, it works with radio buttons, it works with drop downs. The only thing I don't think it works with is the piping, because when if you put a piped value in and it comes back, Shazam only renders the name of the field then. It doesn't do the piping. You can do radio buttons and all sorts of things. The other thing you can do, which I didn't do for this, like if you see here, for example, like this alternate phone label is really far away from the field. What you can do is use CSS, cascading style sheets, to move this label over to do like a text align right. And you can add CSS to this if you're comfortable with CSS. So like let's go here to the phone label, and all you're going to do is within this first table data tag, you're going to add your styles. So you would say style equals, and then within that you're going to say text align right, and then you have to add some padding. And that will pull the field over the label to the right. So that, that'll make it look better. You can do the same thing with the last name. The other thing too is you can add, you can change the font color of these labels. You can do all sorts of things if you want to do HTML. And I can show you that. If anybody have any questions about this before I go on and show you some of the other Shazam examples that I've done?
I was actually just a little curious, since you can't pipe in stuff, what does it look like if you lock the field? What would that look like? Like, because I have imported data, and so I don't want my end user messing with it. So if you lock the field, does that, I don't know what that would look like, I guess.
I'm not sure.
If anybody's tried that with Shazam. Okay, then I'll play around with it. Because you would just lock the text field and then use Shazam and see what that looks like.
Are you saying lock it in the designer?
Yeah, yeah. I'm just wondering if it would just be grayed out in the Shazam. I'm assuming yes. Because if you lock it normally, it's grayed out, right? And so the,
right.
Or I guess it's the read-only tag. I think that's what it is. Yeah. I just have a lot of imported data, so I don't want anybody screwing with it, but I like the idea of having like a mixed match of locked data and user entered data. So that's my thought process there.
Yeah. So
okay, so that's grayed out.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything to it, but it allows you can't enter data into it. So that's a good
Okay. Okay.
So let me close this tab because I don't know if it'll let me keep it open. And you guys, so this is, can everybody see this biospecimen demo? I
can see it.
Okay. So one of the things that we had a group that they wanted to track biospecimen collections, and so I created a bunch of Shazam fields. Now, for me, what I like to do when I do Shazam is I make them this really gaudy color because then I can see immediately which ones are my Shazam fields if I have stuff that isn't. And then you'll see down here, these are all the Shazam fields that I'm going to be outputting. So let me go to Add Edit Records, actually the record status dashboard. And what you can do is you can use it to add, like, so I think I've given them enough Shazam fields to enter 20 samples, and then I've hooked it to this, I've done the branching logic to where it doesn't show unless you click Add Sample. So if I was to add a new sample, then now I can just add, I can keep adding samples, and it's almost like a matrix of fields. And then one of the other ones I've done is if they took blood, you can have it set. So this whole group here, this sample information is all done with Shazam. And if I say that I've collected 4 samples instead, what it does is it gives me 4 of these little groups. And then if I say that, you know, I have the new sample that I put in, if I say that this was dispensed, I have a little group here in Shazam that shows up and goes away depending on what my status is. So then they could enter records that have been pulled out of their biospecimens, and then these are all done with Shazam. This is what I recommend. If you do something like that, it can get pretty cumbersome pretty quickly, because you'll see here that there's 20 or there's 10 sample labels, and then each one of these for the dispense, this is the sample group, and then this is the dispense group for each one, and I think I've done 20 of those. So it's helpful if you build the first one and get it working, and then you can copy and paste the rest of those, and then you just have to change the field you're referring to. So this is biodispensed 1, the next one would be 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. And the other thing you can do is use this. There's an attribute in Shazam that this is really advanced, but it's called Data Shazam Mirror Visibility. And what it allows you to do is if this field is hidden, it hides everything in this table row. So you can set it to where those things will show or hide depending on whether a field has a value or not. And that's how this dispensed works. That's how this dispense works when you say that it's dispensed. Because when I have branching logic that says when this says dispensed, this dispense date is visible, and then because of that, it toggles to show the whole group of that. And then I have one more quick demo that I can do to show you some really crazy stuff I had to do with Shazam. Let me go to my projects here. We had a group that was using Hebrew and Arabic, and they were using the right to left module, because in Hebrew and Arabic you read from right to left, but the matrix field doesn't work with right to left. So I had to use Shazam to mimic that. So let me just go to one of these records here. Because they also had to use the multilingual module as well. So if I open up the survey, so this is all done with Shazam, because each one of these radio buttons is a separate field, and I'm having to kind of mimic matrix fields and the matrix values up here with Shazam. And then not only that is I'm also having to mimic the multilingual, because when you click on the button, it changes from Hebrew to Arabic and back and forth. So in Shazam, each one of these labels, so these are all the radio buttons, and then each one of the fields has the Hebrew, and then it has the Arabic. And what I'm doing is I'm giving them a class of language 1 and language 2, and I'm using some JavaScript here to say that if language 1 is clicked, show me this label and hide this label. And I'm doing that for every field to mimic that multilingual functionality using Shazam. So that was a really complicated process. But yeah, so you can do quite a lot of things. We had a group that did, they created like it was like a table survey that they were able to calculate appointment times based on the first appointment that went in, and they had like, week 1, week 2, week 3, and then because you put in the baseline appointment, it went to, it automatically filled in the table for the other appointments. There's all sorts of things you can do as long as you just understand the basic format of the tables. And really all you need to know for the tables is how many rows and how many columns. And it's really just these 3 tags that you need to know: the table row, and the table data. And once you figure out how to do that and combine those, and I didn't use it here, but in the alternate to the column span is row span. So not only can you have cells go across columns, but you can have them go up and down across rows. So that's something else you can use as well. Does anybody have any questions?
I do not. I thought that was very useful and helpful. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. All right. Well, Terry had to go to another meeting, so if nobody has any more questions, we can end a couple minutes early. Anybody?
Not I. I'm going to get off. Thank you very much.
Okay. You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right.
Good day.
Bye.
Bye.